This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into today's episode of Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Monday, January 9th, 2023, and we're so glad you could join us for today's show. And in today's show, I will speak with Matt Herman. He is the Iowa Soybean Association Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing, and he's going to join us for the latest edition of Between the Pods. And as always, we will take a look at the ag weather outlook. But first, let's run down the markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day, we are joined now by Robin Schmahl of agmarket.net to tell us how things wrapped up in the marketplace today. Robin, what did we see in the grain markets?
Well, grains were a little bit disappointing as the day progressed. We started out a little stronger, and and some of that had to do with some of the optimism from China, some of the outside markets showing some strength. Stock market was up higher earlier in the day, following on the heels of last Friday when we had a strong close. But then as the day wore on, it just kind of ran out of some of that steam. I think the news that's out there, is being looked at with skepticism based on the upcoming World Supply and Demand report and quarterly grain stocks report, which is shaping up that it could be a little bit negative, but of course it's anybody's expectations. But the export inspections this morning probably set a little bit of a negative tone in the market. Corn was at 15.7 million bushels. That was down 11.2 million from last week. Beans at 52.8 million bushels. That was down 1.4 million bushels. Not a lot, but just showing a little bit of a slowdown in what's inspected for shipping out. Now, wheat was the stronger one on that side at 7.4 million bushels, up 4.3. Now, wheat did show some good strength for quite a while during the day. But again, that kind of petered out into the end, moving into slightly negative territory at the end of the day now. In Argentina, which we've been watching fairly closely as far as the weather there is concerned, more than 7.4 million acres now they anticipate in the key area of Pampas is in a poor to very poor condition. Now, some of those acres in some of the other areas haven't been planted because it was so dry. Now we're seeing some really poor conditions. Now there's some rain, maybe in the 10 to 15 day forecast. They're showing maybe a little bit change in pattern. However, it's very difficult to predict weather that far out. We all know that. Sometimes it's even more difficult to predict it the next day than looking out that much farther. So that'll remain to be seen, but they are really concerned about what's going on in Argentina. Didn't have enough behind it to push the market higher today. Even the Brazilian crop has been cut slightly by 0.8% or 1.3 million tons, according to Safras Mercados, came out as well today, but still not enough to trump, maybe a little bit of the bearish attitude moving up what we could see on that report later in the week, and some of the slower export inspections. Now, China did also receive their first shipment of corn from Brazil. 68,000 tons came on a cargo ship. That's going to start the shipping from Brazil to China, which is going to cut into some of our business, depending on price and whatever there. So that's probably a noteworthy thing that's really going to impact maybe more of the corn market than anything else at the present time, seeing that potential is there to reduce some of our exports, at least in the near term.
And Robin, on the other side of the ag marketplace, what was the story today in the livestock markets?
Well, livestock finally saw a bump. Yeah, I mean, last week we saw mostly down days coming into livestock, and we saw a little disappointing appointment last week in the cash for cattle. We were steady to a 0.5 cent higher. 50 cents higher, I'm sorry. And that was a little disappointing because some of the people and the traders were looking at maybe cattle getting to $1.60, but that didn't materialize. But box beef has been holding fairly well, indicates good demand. Some of the slaughter was a little bit lower last week, but still they're holding the slaughter levels high. Now today we came in with renewed optimism again. Markets bouncing back up. Now that doesn't really mean that we've turned the trend. Now feedlots are going to gun for higher cash this week. So closing steady to slightly higher on cash last week. I mean, it's a victory. You can say that they didn't decline, but it's a victory. So there's some renewed optimism there. Cattle weights are coming in lighter. Marketings are current. They're looking at tighter supplies down the road. I mean, that's all into the market at the present time. Now, on the hog side, hogs took a beating. I mean, the last 2 weeks, they took a beating. Today seems to be more of a standpoint of oversold market correction, some short covering that took place because cash at the noon report was down 25 cents. So we didn't see anything really there to light a fire under the market. Now, cutouts at midday were up $1.06. That you have to take with a grain of salt because Friday we were up fairly strong, about $1.70 or so in cutouts at noon, but we ended up closing cutouts lower in the day. So until we get the final print for the day this afternoon, we have to view that with a little skepticism. So I think most of the rally initially in the hogs is from just being oversold. Now, February still has a chart gap below it. At the close Friday, it was about $1 lower. I thought maybe that would fill that gap before it went up. So with that gap still being under the market, we have to really be cautious that we think that this market has put in a bottom, because generally those gaps will be closed at some point in time, and we are near closing that right now. So the hog market's probably strictly a technical bounce.
He is Robin Schmahl with agmarket.net with our closing market analysis. Robin, how can our viewers get in touch for more great information?
They can call me directly at 877-256-3253, or they can go to agmarket.net. The phone number's on the website. They can reach any one of us brokers if they have any thoughts or want to get some advice.
He is Robin Schmahl from agmarket.net. Our guest today. Robin, thank you so much for the time and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure being on.
That was Robin Schmahl with agmarket.net. Let's turn our attention now to the closing numbers, and those courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. March corn is down 1 1/4 at 6.52 3/4. New crop December down 3/4 cent at 5.90 1/4. January soybeans up 2 even at 15.03 1/2. New crop November soybeans down 5 1/2 at 13.91 3/4. March soybean meal down $7.30 at 4.70.30. March soybean oil up 18 cents at 63.35. Chicago wheat down 1 1/2 at 7.50 even. Minneapolis wheat up 1 3/4 at 8.97 1/2. Kansas City hard red wheat down 2 3/4 at 8.25 1/4. May oats down 5 even at 3.38 1/4. On the Merc, live cattle for February up 97 cents at 157.75. January feeder cattle up 92 cents at 183.62. February lean hogs up 52 cents at 80.80. Pork cutout for February up 17 cents at 88.90. Class 3 milk for January up 36 cents at 19.67. And that's been a check of the Ag Market Recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. And when we come back, I will visit with Matt Herman, Iowa Soybean Association Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing. This is AMPM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today I speak with Matt Herman, ISA Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing. We're going to talk about the current and future state of biodiesel.
It's time to go between the pods with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and the Iowa Soybean Association. For the next year, we will explore the ways Iowa-grown soybeans are making a difference at home and around the world. Now, here's your host of Between the Pods, Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and we are here for Between the Pods. It is our bi-weekly show where we talk about a new subject when it comes to soybeans here in the state of Iowa, and oftentimes we are visiting with someone that is associated with the Iowa Soybean Association in some way, and today I have Matt Herman with me. Matt, could you go ahead and just tell our audience what your job duties are here with the ISA?
So my name is Matt Herman, and I work with the Iowa Soybean Association, and here I'm the Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing. So what I'm doing here is looking at these kind of burgeoning environmental markets for agricultural products like corn and soybeans, but also the products that these are turned into. So I'm thinking about these carbon programs that are being offered to farmers today to do conservation practices, but then also the markets that are consuming these beans at the end of the day to make things like biofuels, biodiesel, and sustainable aviation fuel even.
And Matt, something that I've constantly learned over the days of doing this program is just all the uses for soybeans. I'm not sure that the average person is fully aware of that. Do you come across that in your day-to-day work?
Oh yeah, so I think especially in the kind of renewable energy community, I think people think we just take a soybean and we grind the whole thing up kind of like corn and it gets turned into fuel. And we oftentimes have to kind of start with that basic 101, which is, hey, we take this soybean and we process it, and 80% of it is animal feed, or human food, but largely animal feed, and it's always going to be that. And then we have this 20%, this vegetable oil, and largely we used to eat that, but then with the ban on trans fats, we've really moved that into industrial uses. So biofuels is a big part of that, but we see things like lubricants, all kinds of things. I just saw a bottle of soy-based DeWalt bar and chain lube you can buy at Home Depot now.
So Matt, let's talk about renewable fuels specifically, because I think there's some questions that maybe the typical person doesn't fully understand necessarily some of the language that's used and exactly what you're talking about when it comes to the different renewable fuels. So we'll just start off with the basics first. You've got corn ethanol that we hear a lot about, obviously, and that's what you're putting in your car, your daily driver, probably at the pump. But then we also have all kinds of other renewable fuels. What renewable fuels are there that are on the soybean side?
Yeah, so you kind of hit it right. The main thing that most consumers are familiar with is that corn ethanol, and that's because that's what's blended into your gasoline. Largely on the soybean side, though, we produce a vegetable oil, and that actually looks a lot like diesel fuel. So the fuels that we've turned that soybean oil into are diesel-like substitutes. That first product that we made, we really commercialized about 30 years ago, actually in western Iowa and Ralston, was called biodiesel. And that was taking that fatter oil, doing a very basic reaction, and coming up with this fuel that can be blended into diesel fuel, used up to 20% in a variety of conditions and applications. Today, we figured out and designed technology that's a little bit more advanced. So we're able to take that same fatter oil molecule, but put it through a process that looks a lot more like a traditional petroleum refinery. And the benefit of that is we get a fuel out of the back end that looks almost identical to diesel fuel, but gets us very large carbon reductions. And so that means that we can use these fuels in extremely low cold temperatures, which has sometimes been an Achilles heel of biodiesel. We can also use it neat, meaning we can put it 100% in our gas tank unblended and not have any issues, or we don't have to modify the engine. That's another huge benefit. But it does cost a little bit more to make. The last kind of benefit of this renewable diesel platform, as you may hear it called, is that it can produce this, I'll call it a future fuel, but it's really where the market's driving, is sustainable aviation fuel. So this is one way that we can take biomass, soybean oil in this case, and convert it into a jet fuel replacement. And as we think about the broader energy industry and what industries are going to be extremely hard to decarbonize, we recognize that things like diesel trucks, airplanes, boats, these things are going to have a much longer runway where they're going to need these liquid fuels.
So how available is the diesel fuels that come from soybeans? How available are they? Is it anywhere corn ethanol is king when it comes to renewable fuels and its availability. So how close is that availability when you're talking soy diesels?
Yeah, so it depends largely on state policy. So, nationally, if you look at it at the federal level, we consume about 60 billion gallons of diesel fuel a year in the variety of applications, everything from farms to trains to heating people's homes. Of that, about 3 billion gallons total, so about 5%, is some sort of biodiesel or renewable diesel. So if you think about ethanol, we're about a 10% blend on average nationally. In the biodiesel world, we're at about a 5% blend nationally. Now, the story is not equal state by state, kind of like it is with ethanol. And what I mean here is, like, in the state of Iowa, for example, we have incentives that really support higher blends of biodiesel, these B11, B12, so 12, 13, 14% biodiesel. Similarly in Illinois, many states don't have those policies. Now, if you go to a place like the West Coast where they have really aggressive carbon reduction goals, if you were driving your diesel-powered, Ford Power Stroke and pulled up to the pump in California and got a gallon of diesel fuel, it's probably got about 40 to 50% renewable content in that market. And so what that reflects is that because that state has such aggressive carbon reduction goals, they're importing large amounts of this biofuel that we produce in the Midwest. We're putting it on rail cars and sending it out to California to be used.
So, Matt, I keep hearing then that the demand is going to continue to rise because of, I think, largely these diesel fuels and their capability in terms of using the soy powered version of that. And we've seen a lot of crush facilities now that have either started up or they've changed hands, but they're kind of working towards that goal. Does that mean then that we are just ramping up towards a bigger availability, more production of these types of fuels?
Oh, yeah. So a few things that really happened, a couple things happened since 2020, like we all know. But one of those big outcomes of COVID was the refinery system. These traditional petroleum companies that had these huge refineries around the country started to look at, what's the future of these plants? What are the products they're going to supply? What markets are they going to sell to? And when kind of their petroleum market, kind of the bottom fell out in that April, May timeframe when we were all at home, a lot of them exercised those plans that they had long on the shelf to convert these refineries into producing renewable fuels, or at least partially convert. And why that matters is because, we've built, if you go to Ralston, Iowa or Newton, Iowa, you'd see a 30 million gallon biodiesel plant. So that's about the size. These refineries are producing 900 million gallons. So you're talking about just the size, the magnitude difference is really massive. So we saw 3 or 4 refineries that converted, and between those, a handful of refineries, their announced capacity was the entire current capacity of the whole U.S. industry. And so when they sit back and say, well, where are we going to get all this oil from, this raw material, it largely comes back to soybeans because we're the elastic supply. If there's more demand, we can grow more. So we have more soybeans. We've exported historically about 50% of our crop to China as whole beans. So this was the opportunity for large crush players and even new entrants to build these plants domestically, process these soybeans because they knew they'd have a home domestically for the oil to disappear it as a renewable fuel, and now they're working to build those meal channels out. So the crush expansion is going to be huge. It's absolutely necessary for the biodiesel and renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel sectors to expand. It's probably going to have really beneficial aspects for the livestock producer who's likely to start seeing lower cost soybean meal come onto the market as we crush more and more beans here domestically.
That was Matt Herman, Iowa Soybean Association Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing. As for right now, let's take a look at the ag weather outlook. Well, it is a very nice day here in the state of Iowa today for much of the state. We have very comfortable temperatures and sunshine. At least here in central Iowa, we got sunshine pretty much for the entire day today. Felt pretty good, and it actually had me thinking a little bit about spring. So that is the current state of affairs when it comes to weather here in central Iowa. Let's turn our attention now to the entire state and what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours. As you can see from the National Weather Service, it is a beautiful day around the state of Iowa today. Most of Iowa seeing sunny skies with high temperatures in the 35 to 50 range. Tonight, partly cloudy with increasing clouds in central and eastern Iowa. Those clouds increasing as the night progresses. Low temperatures this evening, 17 to 27. And tomorrow, going to be a pretty similar story to what we saw today around the state of Iowa. Partly sunny with warm temperatures and highs tomorrow expected 33 to 49. And turning our attention now to our affiliate weather map for tomorrow. Cherokee will be a little bit on the cool side compared to the rest of our affiliates, but remember, a lot of that snow still on the ground in northwest Iowa. Cherokee 33 and partly cloudy tomorrow. Shenandoah will be a different story. 49 degrees, mostly sunny. Des Moines 40 and mostly sunny on Tuesday. Albia expecting a high temperature around 42 with partly sunny skies. Waterloo 33 on Tuesday and partly sunny. And Clinton a high temperature expected around 38 with partly sunny skies. For a more detailed forecast in your part of the state, make sure you check with your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook. And that also brings us to the end of this episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And you can find all of our video content and previous episodes of Ag Matters PM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget our free twice daily market podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. On behalf of Riley Smith and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.